and still is. Cool. I don't know if you guys heard that, but we're recording now. Sorry, that startled me. And so, and that started with just Mo and myself, and Chris was involved a little bit in the in the first album, but only here and there. And I it was the first time I'd ever worked with a screamer, especially in a hip hop context. It may be the first time I'd ever heard that too. So, you know, his involvement in the first project was a little limited. But then when we started to perform, I really understood how that dynamic worked, and it really that's where it comes to life in a way that I was like, okay, now I get it. And so then when we started working on the second project, I really involved him more in the creation of that album. That was Torch Song. And that's when we started to bring John Ullman in, kind of similarly to how we brought Chris in on the first project. He was kind of here and there on bits and pieces of songs. And through working with him, he then started to perform with us a bit. And again, we saw how the energy felt and how that felt right. So then when it came to making the new normal, John was really a part of the band at that point, and that's when Tim started to come in and play the same role. And basically, with every album we make, we acquire a new band. And by the end of our careers, Still Gold will be 37 people.
Big band.
And so that's how we're here.
Now, you guys have done a lot of different collaborations. Not only the story of the collaborations about, you know, one of you leads to another, but also, you know, you've just recently done the BSO collaboration. You've done things at the MFA. Mo, could you kind of talk to us about like how and why, like what is it that interests you about these kinds of partnerships with organizations like our own?
I think the best thing to describe, I just watched this thing with Noriega from the group Capone and Noriega. He has a podcast called Drink Champs, and he said that you know, although he is Black and Dominican, and you know, he recognizes that there are other races in the world and stuff like that, he's hip hop first, you know. So that community is just a vast world of all different types of beings, you know, and what that culture brings is just a different perspective from all over the world, different languages, different ideas and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think from my first band on, I just saw it as that, a wealth of knowledge, you know, and because hip hop is everything beautiful, meaning that, you know, that you can't find anywhere where there isn't a music that hasn't been used in or utilized or emphasized in some way in hip hop, whether that's electronic, country, folk, classical, you know, there's all types of different genres within the hip hop production and space and, you know, all that stuff like that. So, you know, I've worked with all types of people, like Charles James to Lady Lamb to different artists, even the BSO, and you know, all of these collaborations. No one's better than the other. You know, it's all knowledge. You know, and it's wonderful moments that I will take with me. You know, to my grave. You know, it's just you know, although like, you know, there are daunting tasks, like we're always trying to outdo ourselves, you know. We're always trying to, what's something else that we can think about when we're 70 and say, hey, I can't believe I did that. You know, and that's what this stuff is about. Like the fact that I get to do songs with Will Daly and Oompa and Cliff Notes and the BSO. That's what this is about for me, is the experiences and adding moments to my life that enrich my future, you know? So.
Yeah, I mean, what what you say about hip hop as a culture in terms of the intersections that it activates and kind of cross-pollinates these different forms of knowledge is kind of like why I continue to love working at PEM, because of the global museum. We're really engaging with the intersections between cultures, between technologies, between disciplines, and so I felt very that the collaboration was very really at the kind of heart of what I'm trying to do as a curator. Maybe I can ask Jonathan and Janos a question. So the film opens with Janos asking Jonathan to kind of make the drum sounds and kind of coming into kind of sync with the room and its reverberations. I wonder if you could kind of talk a little bit about what it was like to work in the room for each of you, for Jonathan as a performer, and for you, Janos, as the producer. Yeah.
You want me to go first, Art?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is, while I'm setting up the drums, kind of putting everything in place and kind of hitting things, you can hear how long the decay on the sound. So if I hit the kick, like he said in the video, it's like he needs a certain amount of space to work with that sound in order to capture it. So immediately on setting up, we were figuring that like this, a lot of it was going to probably be pieced together, because if I played a beat at a normal speed, all of those sounds start to ricochet off each other in the room. And we've worked together a lot in the studio. I mean, Ark is a mastermind when it comes to, sound and how sound works and travels. So I think right off the bat, when we were kind of setting up the drums and hitting them, we got an idea that the process for recording drums was going to be a little bit different. And it was through the sound check that he had already captured the beat that was going to be used with that song. And this was just me setting up and getting ready and playing with the sound of the room and stuff like that. And at the end of it, he was kind of like, no, I think I got what I need, because he was talking me through the whole process and how slowly to hit, a drum, each part of the drum. Then you saw at some point in the video, I had to take the kick drum by itself and hit it with my hand, take the snare and play it on the floor. I mean, it wasn't difficult for me. It was probably super difficult for him, but that's how we were able to figure out how to piece together the drums to make it work, because that room was super echoey. But it's never lost on me to know that when you're working with someone who's that good at hearing something before it's even used in the song, it makes my job, a million times easier.
Cool. How about you, Tim and Chris? What was the most surprising thing for you in terms of your performance in that space?
I probably have a shorter answer than you.
You want to go?
I mean, I scream a lot, so it's like the room kind of lent itself for that. I mean, the
room description.
Yeah, it's a great room. It's a great but I mean, the way it sounded. I mean, we were listening back. I mean, to like just everything that was recorded in the room, and Tim parts as well. It's just the natural reverberation in that room. Like, I don't think you used any, right? Like, no. After
just use the room.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. Like when you can, it just adds something to the song where it's actually like captured without having to use After Effects. I think that says a lot about a room. When it has a feel to it. I mean, you can hear it in like even the stick patterns that John played on the stairwells and stuff. I mean, but I mean, for me, it was kind of like, it was beautiful just to be able to like capture it all and the way it kind of reverberates. And there's a lot of history in that room too, so all the feels you get kind of from that is what gets caught up in the because it is that. I mean, we explored the whole place, and it's just you can feel it when you walk around. It's just you take a little something from each room, and yeah, that, for me, that was the takeaway. Just kind of being able to use the space in a way that it wouldn't have to be manipulated.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool to be able to respond in the moment and to be present. I think the beautiful thing about that experience was we were able to be present with one another in a different way than what might transpire when Ark has a production idea, has a beat idea, might spend a couple days working on it, might send it to Mo might sit on it and send some ideas back, a week later, 3 weeks later, we kind of have the starting of something. A month and a half later, we have it, a little more full. But, for this experience, we were able to be very present in a really cool and different way. And I think the other interesting thing about music is that it's more than what you hear. It's math, it's science, it's just as human as the individuals who are making it. And we're responding to that naturally. The fact that Ark didn't have to use any After Effects or technology to craft what individuals are hearing in terms of the reverb and the space from different sounds, like that in and of itself is something that is happening presently in that room, in that space, and we were able to be not only a part of it, but also capture it in a really cool way.
Awesome. So I'm going to open this up to questions in just a moment. So for those who would like to make a remark or ask a question, these guys, if you could just jot a quick note in the chat window, and I'll call on you to come and ask your question. So you guys have decided to release this song tomorrow on Spotify, and I'm really thrilled about that. So at what point did you realize that you had something that you felt deserved a broader release? That's one question. And I guess a follow-on question has to do with the economics of the music business. Of course, we've heard a lot about, Spotify will pay like a third of a cent for a play or something like that. And a lot of the traditional mechanisms for musicians to earn a living have become increasingly tenuous. I wonder if you could talk to us about the digital futures, because you're doing a lot of releases online, and what possibilities you see there.
You want to take that?
The digital stuff. The digital stuff is important for sure. It's tough because they don't really serve the artist, in my opinion. But it's nice to be able to have some place that's a home where people are already listening to and your music is on there. It's a huge company. People are already listening on these huge companies. So, but do they serve the artists? I don't think so. You ask some of the bigger artists, they'll tell you that they don't make much money on that stuff either. So it's for me, as I get older, my love for vinyl is just gotten bigger, the older I get. So having actual hard copies of your music, I feel like that lasts longer, it stands the test of time, and it's the best quality. I'm sure with time, those digital things will get better in sound, but as for right now, what I care about is just leaving something behind when I'm gone, you know. And although, you know, that will still be there, having hard copies of something, knowing that it takes the effort to take a record out of a sleeve, dust it off, clean it, take the needle, put it onto the thing, spin it, that right there means the world to me, that somebody would do that to my music. But
And let's say the other beautiful thing about the music in recognizing what we do, like we're in the business of music. This isn't just hobby. Like we aren't doing this just to make art. It is a part of the it is the catalyst for like why we love what we do, is that we were individuals who were like we are individuals who like had a love for music and love for the art form, but we also have to recognize like we are a business as well. And I think having the reach and the power of institutions like yourselves allow us to amplify our art, which is also something that we need to monetize to sustain ourselves. Some of us have families, mortgages, rents for studios, and so forth. So in a very like straightforward and blunt sense, like we need opportunities like this to continue to grow and leverage our art, so that individuals, one, are able to connect with it, and then two, because we know that we're dope and they're going to connect with it, our hope is that they also move in a direction of paying for such services. We're in the service of entertaining and in service of providing an experience that someone can connect to and get lost in. So that is what individuals who are on this call doing. Like, you're here supporting individuals who are paying for their lives through a service and product that looks like and sounds like the music that we created during that time.
Yeah, I feel like now it's like unheard of for people to pay for music. Like, to buy an album, kids are like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I just go on Spotify and listen to it. Like, it's just a lost art of supporting an artist. You know what I mean? Like, you'd buy an album, 10, 20 years ago, and because you wanted to support the artist. Now it's just there, right? So you have this strange moral dilemma, like, well, do I just listen to it for free, or and listening to it on Spotify, if you think you're actually paying the artist, you're horribly mistaken. And it's just there's so to actually, the only way artists really nowadays, even industry artists, to make money, you have to tour, and we all know that hasn't been happening. So the music industry has been it's in a weird place right now, because even top artists aren't making the money that they were 5-6 years ago. It's a strange decline, and I don't know how to fix it. I like Mo said, vinyl records, you see all these physical things, but people aren't really buying those anymore either. It's all streams, and it's a strange sea to navigate.
So my views actually differ from my band on this topic. I think it's a complex situation that we're in at the moment. I think is really what it comes down to. I think what we're dealing with is you're dealing with a lot of people like to look at it as an either or. They look at it as like, man, I remember when I used to sell CDs and I made 10K out of my trunk, and I reckon that is not where we are anymore. That I can tell you. But you also sold 10K out of your trunk to the people who came to your trunk. This song is going to drop at midnight, and we have fans in England, in France, in Germany, in Eastern Europe, in Japan, in Asia. They're all going to hear this song literally at midnight tonight. Our reach has gotten so much wider because of the technology. So I think that needs to not get overlooked. Getting proper distribution channels back in the day when we were relying on physicals was impossible as an independent artist. It was so difficult to try to get the reach that we now currently have. I can load up a song and my distributor can get it in the system within 48 hours, 72 hours, and it can reach somebody in Germany. Like, we need to not mind or underappreciate the value that comes with that, you know, because then we go and tour in those places, and those people have heard our latest music and can continue to support by way of also still buying the physical. So I think it's not so much an either or as it's a, we just have to diversify and look at things a little bit differently. And I think that we also have to remember that things are long term. You know, Still Gold will make, you have to make decisions now today that will pay you all the way until the day you die and continue to pay your children and your next generations. Whereas the vinyl that we make 300 of, once we sell those 300, unless we choose to make more and sell them, we're not going to make we're not going to make any more money off that vinyl when we're 70 years old sitting at our houses, you know what I mean? Whereas we will still get Spotify checks if we make great music that people continue to listen to. So, you know, I'm not saying that, I do think the pay rates are huge issues. I think there are problems. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a, you know, it's a peachy world for an for an independent artist by any means, is what I'm saying. But I think it's just a matter of understanding business structures and recognizing that even the majors who are complaining often sign deals where they're not getting good percentage rates on the revenue streams. They're relying on touring. That's how it's been since, you know, since labels got into the system, is that touring was always the way that artists earn their revenue. You know, it used to be that, you know, labels would stronghold the physicals, the sales of the product, and you know, artists wouldn't see any of that when they were selling their records. So it's changed, it's morphed, but I think that the thing is, you just got to be smart, and you got to understand that decisions you're making today will affect the check you get when you're 70. You know, and so we have to you have to be smart, and you have to watch out about how you structure your businesses and how the deals you make, and making sure that you're protecting yourself as an artist. I think it's almost more important now than it used to be in some ways, because, you know, as Chris said, people aren't as, you know, they're like, oh, I'll just listen to it on Spotify, and which has also leveled the playing field. So now all of a sudden anyone can put anything on Spotify. Everyone's an artist. So that's, you have to do things like this to separate yourselves and try to like really work at excelling as a band, to do creative things, to make people invested in you as artists and as a band, and to try to stand out from the pack, you know. And it's a rat race is what it is. But it's kind of a rat race of holding out, and I think it comes down to really, at this point, like, I think one thing that we've all said and has echoed across is that this is a passion thing for us as well as a business. We're not in it for the business of it, we're in it for the passion of it, but we have to be strategic with the business of it in order to survive and be able to continue to do it. And I think that's the world that we live in 2021. That's my view on it.
Sustainability is absolutely key.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of questions from the audience. Is Grace Colby here? Do you want to come on and ask your question?
Hi, I was wondering if you visited the space prior to the day that you explored it and recorded it. And recorded your song, recorded it.
Yes, briefly. I was there for a brief walkthrough, but not prior to that. Like, I think we spent maybe
10 minutes.
10 minutes
It was really like a tech walkthrough. It was just sort of like, you know, what do you think you might need when day comes, you know, like, it's like, you're like, yes, we're going to need lights and an electrical outlet somewhere. You know, it was a very quick, you know, it wasn't any sort of like come through and like, you know, test out the space and, you know, record little demo things or anything like that. Like we, you know, and it was only Mo and myself.
Yeah,
you know,
I hadn't been there.
you know, so the rest of the guys were walking in completely blind, you know, so it was really just a basically like nuts and bolts walkthrough for about 10 minutes.
Yeah. So like the having like any feel or feelings of like where we were and taking it in, none of that happened.
Yeah.
There is something to it being in Salem. Like many of us have been to Salem before, and I mean Salem existed before the museum, and like the eeriness and the energy that that Salem that you kind of like feel in Salem is definitely something that we pulled on.
It's not creepy.
Exactly. So we were definitely able to draw on that in terms of like connecting with the space outside of the physical, object of the museum itself. But yeah, didn't get a chance to go into the museum prior to either.
What about for you, Jonathan, seeing the space for the first time? Like your bandmate said, hey, like we got this gig. What was your gut reaction?
The first thing that happened when I walked in was I saw how many steps to carry my drums up. Long. And usually when the guys I usually get there early because I usually know it's set up, and I'm like, all right, should I leave the heavy stuff down on the bottom and see? But I think
you did too, by the
way. I think one of the big things that is a test to the band is I think even though Mo and Ark walked through the space, I don't think they wanted to know what have pre-existing knowledge of what the sound would be like, because I think that what ends up happening is they then go in when we're all together and say, okay, this is what we have to work with no preconceived notions of what to bring or anything like that. Like you said, you needed to know about electrical outlets, but even still, the first time we got there and started setting up, that table was in a different place in the room because that was where the closest outlet was. And then eventually they figured out, oh, let's put it in the center of the room. We got to shift everything. So I think that's part of the coolness of it, is not having any expectations. But I mean, drums are usually the hardest thing because they echo and they're so loud. And I think right off the bat, Ark figured that out, and it went right from there.
I will say that the drums were like going in was sort of the biggest concern for me, because I mean, that building was not constructed with hip hop in mind. It wasn't like, what?
Shockingly.
We feel like there will be a hip hop band that's going to record in here someday. So, and modern music and the music that we're in is all about impact. And that comes from direct sound, like really in your face, clean, upfront, direct sound. And, so trying to figure out how to accomplish that while capturing the room and balancing those things was something that definitely had to be taken into consideration, especially with the drums. I mean, we tend to have a lot of textures in our work in general, so I wasn't intimidated by it. But there was a section where you're seeing, you saw John had the snare drum on the floor and was kind of just tapping it really lightly. I mean, that's what gave us our snare drum. It was like we did about maybe 35 different velocities of taps of him hitting that snare drum just to find the right one that excited enough, but not too much. And it was like, I had to ask people to leave the room all the time, because even just walking, like if a creak on the floor would happen, then, that would echo like super loud in the space. So, you had to weigh all those things. And the kick drum that we ended up going with was John hitting the shelves and us miking that up, as opposed to using the actual kick drum. Like there were these just things that sounded certain ways in the space that were more interesting and more creative, that, that worked better. That it's almost like the actual kick drum was too boomy and too big, so that, the fist pounding on the shelf really gave us a better kick drum ultimately than the kick drum itself. So, but there was no way to know any of that. Even in a 10-minute walkthrough, you're not going to know that until you get there and start to play with things. And you got to just be playful. I mean, that's the whole heart of it.
That's a great leitmotif for creativity generally, I think. We have a couple more questions. Gatch, you've got a great question here.
Hey, fellas.
Hey,
First and foremost, Chris, you and that mic, man, I never noticed how soothing your voice is. You got a very soothing voice. You should start a podcast.
Thank
you.
And
then you should talk to all of them about how you're going to start a podcast.
Right. That is the podcast. It's talking about me playing a podcast.
It's pretty avant-garde.
Yeah.
My question has to do with, you know, certain artists we know take a very long time to put out a record. Even if it's done, it's been done. It's like, let's just record 18 more singles that we probably won't release, or like have 5 more collabs. So my question is, how did you like working under the constraint of let's do this in a day? And do you feel like that resulted in compromises in the creative process, or do you feel like it just made you more focused? Because I mean, this track sounds great, so something was working.
For me, I was super nervous. I had been coming off of a pretty bad writer's block, and there's nothing more scary than having it was like, oh, I got 3 days, right? So then the first day was gone, and I was like, all right, I got 2 days.
You don't even really have 2 days because the first
Yeah,
day's
right.
making the beat.
Exactly.
You need something to
Exactly.
write too.
So and then we got to the second evening, and I was like, ooh, like this is gonna. I was like, I still haven't written anything, and yeah, I was proud of what I was writing, because I think I usually come from a space of like seeing something that triggers something in me, and if it's not coming, I get scared that I can only write from a trauma aspect, or that I can only write from an aspect of seeing someone else's living, you know, their joy, their pain, their happiness, their sorrows, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's nice to just write again and just have fun. And I think that was a good thing for me. I needed that, you know. So
I think it was good for everybody, because normally how we create is we're all in the same place. We're all in the studio at the same time, usually. And that's kind of how it is. Everyone bounces stuff off each other, and it kind of things, you know, kind of just bounce and just go from there. And it's hard. The beginning of this new album that we've been working on, we couldn't be in the same room. So, you know, Ark had to be in 4 different sessions, you know, to do one song, whereas before we could all be in the same room, banging out on the same day. So it was cool because it kind of brought us back there, because we hadn't been able to do that for a while, you know, obviously. So, you know, just to be in the same room now and being able to create, I feel like it definitely it heightened the experience for all of us, just to be able to remind us of how we started doing it, you know. So it wasn't anything new, but it felt good to do it again.
Right. So we have one more question, one last question from Aaron Poindexter, and then I'll wrap it up.
Hi there. It's come up a couple times. Mo, you were saying, you're talking about trying to constantly outdo yourself. And then, I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, but Stage Right, Far Right, talking about the grind and the next best thing. And the video was so joyful and playful, but yet I'm hearing you talk about the grind and competition. I just wonder, could you say more about how that, what role competition plays in your life as a musician, as an artist, or the opposite, cooperation, harmony?
I can honestly say, like, for me personally, I can't speak for anybody else, but I try not to partake in competition with other people. I've always seen I'm already dealing with a lot with myself, you know, and trying to outdo what I've already done and get better at what I do. That I really don't try to do that. I know a lot of people that do that. They see what somebody else has done and say, hey, well, we need to do that, or we need to do something better than that. And I've never lived in that mindset. And that's an honest take. I just have never been that way. But with that being said, as a band, we have done some miraculous things. And I do remember sitting with the fact that Lady Lamb is an indie musician, and she's wonderful. At this point, she's a pretty big star, you know? And I remember getting her on a track and being like, oh, this is the biggest thing that ever happened. And then I got gifted Gab, who just passed away, legendary rapper and from the West Coast, actually Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe's favorite rapper, to be perfectly honest. I got him on it. I got a gift of rap.
We didn't get Harry Potter on
Yes,
the song.
we did, but
We
got
tried,
Gifted Gab.
but he was
But,
caught up at school.
But I got him on the track and I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And then that was years and years ago. I never would have guessed that I was able to work with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And I'm always trying to just find ways in which hip hop can be seen in a different manner, in a different way, in a different light, by people that probably don't really understand what it is, what it's about, and how it is a culture, as well as an art form. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
Okay.
Did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% concur, and then I also think that there's something to stepping up to the plate that does pull on an internal drive for like, what does it mean to be present, and if we are present, how do we make the most of this moment? Like, how do we really capture and do this moment justice because we are here, because we are this, like, being here is a gift. Being in these spaces is a privilege for us to be able to say, like, this is our life, this is what we get to do with our skill set, our passion, our voice, our story. And I think that's something that it isn't necessarily connected to competition. It's just more so like, wow, I get to do this, so let me do me, and let me do that to whatever the best of that ability is. And there is a standard that we hold ourselves up to. So I think that going into that space, we wanted to make what we make, and we wanted it to live up to the standard that we've set for ourselves. And that's the guiding, like, meter of like, yo, we're gonna do what we do, and let's not put pressure on what the final result is before we get to the final result. Let's just be here, be present, capture the moment, make the most of this time together as brothers, as family, and like really put what we do into the music. And I think that it definitely did result in something that sounds incredible.
I would say that I do think that like the blend of this group is an important one, like personality wise, because I am extremely competitive. So
That's facts.
So all I'm saying is, and the
It
reason
takes all types.
there's no, but the way in which I'm competitive and I think that this has become something that has actually gotten pervasive, at least in the Boston hip hop scene. I mean, that's the scene I know the best, so I'll speak to that. Is that there is a sense of raising the bar that has become this pervasive thing, and it is a competition, but there are no losers. That's, I think, the difference. It's a matter of like, we see Cliff Notes do what Cliff Notes does. We see what Oompa does. We see what Brandy Blaze does. We see what Y Sham does. We see what Dutch Rebel does. We see what all these artists do, and we bring that with us to Plummer Hall and say, well, we're the ones doing this right now, and we have to make sure that we live up to the standard that our peers have set, and the standard that we've set as well. And so that's the way I view these things. I view it as a responsibility to make sure that we are continuing to push the envelope forward and do work that and deliver the best we can possibly deliver at all times. Like I said, I don't think there's a loser there though, because I then see my peers one up that, and then we one up the next thing, and then it's this back and forth, and it's just progress. It's building. And I think that like, we've seen the community grow in a really amazing way in the past. Again, I'm speaking to the hip hop community because it's the one I operate in the most. So We've seen that community grow and develop in an amazing way in the past decade, I would say, in the city. And I think it's somewhat by virtue of this, like, we all want to push this thing forward in a major way and show that it's not a horse of one color. It's a totally varied thing. There's different styles, there's different variations, there's different, and we can all bring different things to the table and have different ideas. And like, as Mo said, you know, with our collaborations, no one thing is better than the other. It all contributes. It's all part of the grand piece that we're creating as a community. So I am competitive, but I think there's a way in which I am that dovetails with the rest of these guys, and they balance me out, you know. Like, that's how it goes. Like, you know, like I think that's the thing about a dynamic. These 5 guys all bring something different to the table and have different views, and we all either calm each other down, rile each other up, push each other, make, you know, put the bumper lanes on if need be. We all kind of like check each other as we need to be, and that's how it's worked. And I think that's the thing that works well for us.
Yeah, and
So competition, yeah.
I really saw that and felt that in the 3 days that we worked together. And so, you know, I'd really like to thank you all, Mo, Ark, Tim, Chris, John. It's been an incredible honor to work together. I hope that we can find occasion to get you up to PEM for a concert in the not too distant future. I'd also like to thank the friends and family of Still Gold and the friends and family of PEM. It was great to bring everybody together today into this space to have this conversation. And finally, I think it's important that I also acknowledge the incredible support that the museum has received from the Present Tense Visiting Committee and the Gen PEM Steering Committee, which, you know, really help make projects like this possible. So if you want to find out more, please do reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you. So until next time, thank you guys. I'm so excited for the single dropping at midnight, and I hope it does really, really well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.